shots every day with our combined workouts. The whole game is consistency. So it doesn't matter how hard you worked. It's just like, did you go? And that has kind of made, I don't know where that appears on this cycle, but I think of it as like accountability. It also makes it fun. But where is that sort of social pact element on this cycle? Is that the part of the reward of it?
I think it influences all of the behaviors, so the fact that you see other people working out is a cue, right?
Yeah.
So like you might get a text of somebody else's screenshot on
Yeah,
your phone. You're like, oh,
yeah,
I need to get my workout in today. I don't want to forget. So that's a cue that triggers the behavior. There's something attractive about being part of it as a group. You know that once you post your screenshot, that other people are going to see it and like you might get kind of rewarded for it or like you did your thing. So that's kind of exciting and feels motivating. That like motivates you to show up and do it. Sometimes you may work out with somebody, right? And so that there's something there that's improving the response. It's more fun to do it together, but it also gets you moving. And then finally, there's the reward of sticking to the streak or being part of it or not getting.
We get
evicted.
the rewards. There's actually a big metal belt, a physical belt that's handed out every year, but every week there's every month there's a winner that gets the display picture as their face and
That's
stuff
perfect.
like that.
I want the belt. That sounds cool.
That's great. It's got my name engraved in it. It's like a wrestling belt.
That's awesome.
How does this work if you're trying to break a habit?
So for each of these, there are many ways to do each of these things. There's many ways to make habits obvious. There are many ways to make them attractive and so on. And what I'm giving you is just kind of the overview of how to build a good habit or how to install a new behavior. If you want to break a bad habit, then you just invert these 4. So rather than making it obvious, make it invisible.
Okay.
Unsubscribe from emails. Don't keep junk food in the house. Reduce exposure to the cue. Rather than making it attractive, make it unattractive. That's the hardest one. We can talk about that in a second. Rather than making it easy, make it difficult. So increase friction, add steps between you and the behavior. I find, here's 2 examples for me. I've tried this new thing where I keep my phone in another room until lunch each day. So usually it's like 9 to 11 or so in the morning. My phone is down the hall, it's in a different room, and I'm in my office. And it's just a chance for me to work on my own priorities rather than whatever's, coming in through the phone. I'm like everybody else. If my phone is right next to me, I will check it every 3 minutes just because it's there. But if it's down the hall, it's only 30 seconds away, but I never go get it. And I always think that's interesting. It's like, did I want it or not? In the one sense, I wanted it badly enough that I would check it every 3 minutes when it was right by me, but I never wanted it so bad that I'd go work 30 seconds to go get it. And I found that a lot of habits are like that. If you just introduce a little bit of friction, they kind of curtail themselves to the desired degree. So beer is another one. I don't think this would work if you actually have an addiction or something, but I've noticed that if I get like a 6-pack of beer and I put it in the front of the fridge and I open it up and it's like right there and I can see it, I'll have one at dinner just because it's there. But if I put it like on the lowest shelf in the fridge, like all the way in the back, I kind of got to bend down to even see it. Sometimes I'll forget. I'll have it. It'll be there for 2 weeks. I won't even remember that it's in there. And so I think that's all about inversion of the first law, make it invisible, and inversion of the third law, make it difficult. The less likely you are to see it, the harder it is to do, the more steps that are involved, the less likely it is to occur. And then the final piece is the inversion of the last law, which is rather than make it satisfying, make it unsatisfying. So layer on some kind of cost or a consequence. And in Atomic Habits, I call this the cardinal rule of behavior change. It's like so pervasive of a teacher, which is behaviors that get immediately rewarded get repeated, and behaviors that get immediately punished get avoided. And it's so obvious, but you have to ask yourself, do you have a good feeling when you do the thing that you want to do, the habit that you want to build? Are you getting immediately rewarded for that? And if you have a habit you're trying to avoid, what is the cost? What is the consequence? Is there something that feels like a punishment there? If so, then you're more likely to avoid it. If not, it gets tricky.
It's hard, isn't it? With there's cookies on the counter out there. You might have noticed them as you walked in. The team have got them on a little plate. Loads of.
No, but I'm going to grab one on my way out.
But I was just thinking about that. If I have the cookie now, I'm not going to get an immediate punishment. The only sort of immediate punishment is a bit of guilt that I might start to feel that I'm now one step further away from the goals that I've set myself in terms of fitness. Is there any way to bring forward the punishment in areas, not the punishment, but the downsides? The downside.
Yeah. The cost of your good habits is in the present. The cost of your bad habits is in the future. And so for a lot of your quote unquote bad habits, it feels good in the moment. Like eating a donut feels great now. Playing the video game feels great now. Doing, whatever. It's only later that you realize, oh, there was a cost associated with this. Even something like the classic bad habit of smoking. Maybe you get to stand with friends outside and socialize, or maybe you reduce stress in the moment after a long day of work. It's only, 5 or 10 or 20 years later that you have this consequence. So a lot of the game of building better habits is finding ways to pull the rewards of your good habits into the present moment. So you feel good now. You don't have to wait 3 years for it to happen. And pulling the consequences of your bad habits into the present moment so that you feel a little bit of the pain right now and you realize this isn't actually serving me.
Which I guess is why they put the photos of people's lungs on the cigarette packets.
That's, like one of the things it's trying to do, right?
What about this habit scorecard over there? Is that what your parents use for swimming?
So the habit scorecard, this is just a simple assessment. The insight behind this practice is that intentional behavior change starts with self-awareness, right? So you will change your habits all the time, whether you think about them or not. You're building habits, whether you focus on it or whatever. Like your brain and body is built for it. Now, the more interesting question is, can you design your behavior? Can you shape your habits in the way that you want? And that's where self-awareness comes in. It's very hard to shape your habits without being aware of them. And so there have actually been some studies that have found that just the act of becoming more aware of a behavior will change it on its own. For example, there was one study that looked at people who journaled about they created food journals for what they were eating. No tracking of anything. They were not on a diet. They're not trying to eat a certain way. They don't care about how many calories you have. There's no tracking or anything. All they did was simply write down what they ate each day. And just the act of journaling about it changed what people ate and reduced the number of calories that they had and so on, just because they were aware of what was happening. And so this is true for most habits, which is once you start to notice them, then you start to notice ways that you could improve them or ways that you could refine them or ways that maybe you want to do things differently. You're not operating as on autopilot in quite the same way. So the habit scorecard is just a simple way to do this. It's very simple. You just write down all the habits that you're doing each day. So you can start, usually there's like a package of behaviors in the beginning and maybe around lunch and then like a power down routine at the end of the day. But it could be something like wake up, drink a glass of water, take a shower, check my phone, get dressed, whatever. Like you just, go through the list of what your normal day looks like. And then once you have the behaviors written down, you give them a score. And the score is just, if it's a good habit or a habit that you like that's contributing to your life, you put a plus sign. If it's a habit that you feel like you want to get rid of, like maybe say I wake up and then I scroll on my phone for 10 minutes before I get out of bed. You're like, well, do I really want to be doing that? Maybe not. I'll give that a minus sign. And then some stuff's just neutral, like get dressed, sure, whatever. Just put an equal sign. And the idea is not to judge yourself for it. It's more like, sometimes I tell people, it's almost like, imagine when you go to the zoo and you look at the lions and you're like, oh, wow, how interesting that they would do that. You kind of do that with yourself and you're like, oh, how interesting that I spend my time that way. You're not trying to judge yourself or analyze it. It's just, let me see what I'm actually spending my time on. And then once you have that list, I think and this is later in the book, but there's, it becomes very useful for building habit stacks, for layering your new habits on top of the things that you're already doing. And so some of it's self-awareness, some of it is priming for habit stacking.
Habit stacking?
Yeah.
What is a habit stack?
Hey, look at this. I like these props. This is great. All right, so first let me just unpack the idea. Habit stacking is this concept that came from Stanford professors named B.J. Fogg. And his insight, which I think is great, is that it's easier to build a new habit if you layer it or stack it on top of an old habit, a habit you're already doing. He calls it the tiny habits recipe, I think. But the insight is just that we all have habits that we're performing each day, and those can become anchors. They can become cues that prompt the new behaviors that we're going to perform. So let's say that your current habit is you make a cup of coffee, right? So you're already doing this. You're going to start each day. You're going to make a cup of coffee. And the new habit that you want to build is you want to start meditating. So then you could say, all right, after I make my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds. So this is just like a basic habit stack, right? So you start with coffee and then you meditate after. Now, once you get good at this, you can start to chain them together. So for example, you could say, after I make my morning cup of coffee, I will I will meditate for 60 seconds, and then I will write my to-do list for the day. After I write my to-do list for the day, I will prioritize them and start working on, my first task or whatever. And now you have this little stack that you do the same way each morning, each time. And it just is a way to build simple momentum and get you in. I've got readers who have made all kinds of habit stacks. One of the funny ones that I remember is one guy, he was really into working out and he was always drinking protein shakes, but his finances were kind of a mess. And so anytime that he would make a protein shake, he would like check his finances and check his budget for the day. He would like, when I make a protein shake, I fill out my daily budget. That was like his habit stack. But you can do it for anything, right? And the idea is that you want to find a good place for this new habit to live. Sometimes, like let's take the meditation example. As a general rule, as a very broad stroke rule, it tends to be better to do habits earlier in the day rather than later, because the later it gets in the day, the less your day is under your control, right? Like more things interrupt. There's just, you run lower on time, lower on energy, and so on. Mm-hmm. So I like the idea of maybe doing meditation in the morning. So you make your cup of coffee and then you meditate. But if you have like 3 little toddlers that you're chasing around and you're trying to get pants on your kids, then maybe that's not a good time to meditate, right? It's not a good space for that habit to live. So I think once you've done that habit scorecard and you have like all of your normal habits laid out there, you can start to think about the new habit that you want to build and look at that list and then say, okay, what's the appropriate place to insert this new habit? Where should that new habit stack live? What's a good trigger for that new behavior to occur? And so you create these little stacks, and then it just eventually, it doesn't take that long, but eventually you get used to just doing it in the same order each time. Like I have one woman who she's like, every day I walk into my office, I hang up my purse, I hang up my jacket, I go fill up my water bottle, I sit down at the desk and I answer the first email. And that's like, she just does that sequence every time she comes in.
I have one, I think that's kind of related, which is, and this sounds very strange, people are going to think I'm weird, but whatever, is I wanted to learn how to meditate, but in my day, the way that my day was currently constructed, there was no great opportunity where I'm alone for like 10 to 20 minutes and I'm uninterrupted and I'm in that position. And so what I started doing is I started meditating in the shower. I'm there anyway, getting clean. So it's great. It's private. No
long showers.
Yeah, long showers. My girlfriend's like, what the fuck is going on in there? And I'm in there sat on the floor. But no, I started just meditating in the shower, and it was in the morning, alone. I'm going to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So that really helped for me. And then when that started to stick and I started to get a bit of progress and see the benefits, I can move out of the shower per se.
That's great. I had, you're reminding me, I had a woman who came up to me after a talk one time and told me that when she brushes, she wanted to work on her balance. She's getting older, she's getting into her 60s. And she said, each day when I brush my teeth, I brush on one leg and I do like 10 like little kind of half squats on that leg. And then I switch to the other leg and I do 10 more on that. And she was like, my balance is better, my legs are stronger, and my teeth are very clean. It takes a while, but yeah, you can pair it up in all kinds of ways.
On that point of doing things in the morning and generally having less energy later in the day, do you think much about how to manage your own energy? I spoke to Dr. Lisa Feldman, who's a neuroscientist, who came up with this concept of like the body budget, that we have this finite amount of energy. And since then, it's really had a big impact on me, because I start, in so many ways that we've talked about, one of which is I try not to try and take on too much, because if in a world where my energy on a daily basis is finite, I don't want to get to the end of my body budget. But also the order of things, like, do I put my most important tasks today at the beginning of the day, et cetera, et cetera?
I would layer, so yes, I do think about this a little bit, and I've heard this, like, you want energy management, not time management, construct. The other thing that I would add to it that I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about is control. So the standard thing that everybody says is, we all only have 24 hours in a day, which obviously is true. But if you were to break that into like 24 1-hour chunks and just look at your day laid out that way, you have different levels of control over certain 1-hour chunks than others. So for example, what I said a minute ago, like if you have a bunch of kids and you're getting them dressed from like 7 to 8 a.m., that hour isn't that much under your control. It's not a good time to meditate. It's not a good time to work out. There's other responsibilities that tend to happen in that hour. And so I think that's an interesting thing too, is to map your day out and look at this and say, all right, which hours is my energy the best, and which hours are most under my control? And then you can start to see like where ultimately what I think you're getting to is, what are the good hours for me? Like where do those live throughout the day? And then the next step is to ask, what is getting my best hours and what's getting my leftovers? And I have had a couple different times where I've looked at things and said, I say this is important to me, but really it's only getting my leftover hours. And so then you're like, okay, something might need to change. So I think about all of that. I think about how much time do I have in general? Where are the pockets where I have the most energy or the best energy? And then also where are the pockets where I have the most control? And then you try to figure out how to slot stuff in.
And theoretically, you'd want to put the new hard habits you're trying to form in areas where you have the highest degree of control versus like 11 p.m. at night?
Right. I think in general that's right. It's so tricky when you have multiple things that really matter to you. You know, it's like, all right, you're choosing between family, you're choosing between work, you're choosing between personal pursuits and these new habits you're trying to build. Like everything's got to kind of work together. And so it's a balance of shaping all of that.
So many of us are pursuing passive forms of income and to build side businesses in order to help us cover our bills. And that opportunity is here with our sponsor, Stan, a business that I co-own. It is the platform that can help you take full advantage of your own financial situation. Stan enables you to work for yourself. It makes selling digital products, courses, memberships, and more simple products more scalable and easier to do. You can turn your ideas into income and get the support to grow whatever you're building. And we've just launched Dare to Dream. It's for those who are ready to make the shift from thinking to building, from planning to actually doing the thing. It's about seeing that dream in your head and knowing exactly what it takes to bring it to life. Enter to win $100,000 for your dream. All you have to do is share what it is. Learn more at daretodream.stan.store. Did I ever tell you about the data breach that we had at my previous company?
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Which was a total nightmare, so I'm glad that we now use 1Password.
What actually is it, Steve?
It's called 1Password, and they're the sponsor of the podcast now. And they have this feature called Enterprise Password Manager, which means that if any of our passwords across the team are compromised or leaked, then it notifies us. And obviously, if that were to be the case, we're at huge risk across the entire team. Through 1Password EPM, you can also store all of your sensitive information. And it's helping us to move closer towards passkeys, which means eventually everybody will be able to log in to pretty much everything without ever having to put a password in.
Sounds like a good addition.
Yeah, I think it's like the single most impactful security addition you can make to your team, especially if your team has tons of passwords that are all like hidden in Excel files and stuff. To my listeners, if you want to secure your business, head to onepassword.com/DOAC. 1Password is a game changer. It's the future that I always wished would be the case as someone that has, 20, 30 different passwords for 20, 30 different applications. The first time we made our little fitness group on WhatsApp, it was about how many calories you could burn. And that was what awarded you the points and won you the competition. Didn't last long. Didn't last long for a number of reasons. Kind of toxic, unfair, because I weigh more than anyone in the group, so I burn more calories just by standing up. And then it moved to this idea of consistency. How do you think about what is better? Is it better to be consistent, or is it better to be something else?
I feel like there's this story that people tell themselves a lot, which is they want to do the big, impressive thing. Like you want to do, you want to run a marathon, you want to do a week-long silent meditation retreat, you want to, write the best-selling book, whatever. And I think about it as this balance between consistency and intensity. So intensity is a good story. I ran the marathon. I did the silent meditation retreat. Consistency actually makes progress. I meditate for 5 minutes each day. I run, 3 days a week or whatever. And so people need consistency more than they need intensity. And in fact, what I would say is consistency enlarges ability. Consistency enlarges ability. It's the act of showing up consistently that builds your capacity to do something, that fosters the skill development and growth that you want. And so showing up, even if it's just in a small way, is the way that you actually create the opportunity to do something more intense or more impressive down the line. I also think that there's this deep, important lesson that comes from appreciating consistency and what's required there. Consistency is often adaptability. It's flexibility. There's this story about like mental toughness and being being a disciplined person that we tell ourselves that something like, I grind to make sure this happens. I will make it happen no matter what the circumstances. Like that, the mentally tough person pushes through regardless of what they face. But I think that in real life, a lot of the time, consistency is actually being flexible. It's being adaptable. If you don't have enough energy, you do the easy version. If you don't have enough time, you do the short version. You find a way to not throw up a 0 that day. You find a way to show up even if it's not ideal. And that is actually being very mentally tough. And so the adaptable person is the one that, what's that line? It's when the storm came, the oak tree fought it and broke, but the willow bent and survived. And so it's like you need a way to manage the storms of life and bend with them while still showing up. If you purely fight against it, you'd think that being tough, that being mentally tough is like, I'm going to make sure this happens, but it actually makes you somewhat brittle. You need it to be a certain way. And when you need life to be a certain way to succeed, you become held hostage by the situation. You need it to be just like that. But if in fact you can be adaptable and you can be flexible, now you are actually more resilient. And so I think there's a balance to strike there, and it feeds into the consistency that will ultimately enlarge your ability.
I think this is such an important point that I don't often hear people talk about. It reminds me of my friend. My friend, one of my best friends, he has a tendency to feel like he's cracked fitness. And what tends to happen is he'll work out and go to the gym for like 3 months, and he'll then announce that he's finally cracked it, like the consistency, the motivation. And the minute he does that is like 30 days before he falls off again, because I think he gets complacent. Life is going to happen. And I remember saying to him one year, I mean, I've known him for 15 years now. I was like, the thing I've come to learn about the gym and fitness is that you never crack it. And actually the mindset that every single day I could fall off and that life happens has helped me be consistent. Whereas a version of me in 2017 set this ridiculous goal, which was I was going to go to the gym every single day without fail. And then 5 months in, where life happened and I missed a day, my motivation was gone and I fell off.
You see this a lot with top performers in many different domains, which is it's not that they don't make mistakes or they don't slip up. Everybody slips up, but they tend to get back on track quickly. And so really